I'm interested by what you say. I think there's a danger in what you say, that an attempt to set people free by enabling them to do things themselves plays into the present scheme, which is to authorise and to supervise people doing things themselves. One of the big problems that I think you've spotted, and maybe worth bringing out some more, is the way people are now classified into good and to bad at a very early age, or permanently, so you have a permanent government record of your education achievement and of your crimes or half crimes, which are then held against you for the rest of your life. In that sense of circumstance, people have no capacity to improve themselves or to change their lives.
I agree that's a danger, and I mean, you know, Guy, you and I agree on ID cards and many other things. I think it's worth challenging the idea that if you fit a sort of pro forma that will make you a criminal or in some way socially undesirable, then the state has a duty to act, because there's no evidence that I've ever seen that the state actually improves these kinds of things. It's at this point that I always point to the film Minority Report. If there's anyone in this room who hasn't seen Minority Report, go and see it. It's not only a great movie, it's also one of the most significant movies, I think, of the last 10 years, because it promotes the concept of pre-crime. For those who haven't seen it, there are certain beings who've gone through some peculiar process that enables them to predict crimes before they're committed. And this is science fiction. Except that's what we do in this country. That's what that onset database is about. It's looking at a child and saying, we can see you come from a chaotic family and your mother's a drug addict and all of that. So therefore we're going to put you on a database because we reckon you're going to be a criminal. Now, putting them on a database is very unlikely actually to achieve stopping them being a criminal. Improving their mother's life would probably be by far the most significant thing. Getting them to a school where they can actually have some education and some order and discipline would be the second thing. There's quite a lot the state can do, and I'm not sure if you're saying the state should be helpless and withdraw completely, but as I say, I'm not saying the state shouldn't help. I'm just saying that classification databases, holding people down, assigning people to certain roles in life without them is what we've been doing, and it doesn't work. And so although it does take a leap of faith, it is dangerous to end up doing what I'm suggesting, because it assumes there is some inherent goodness in everyone, particularly in every child, if you can bring it out. Then I think the alternative is worse, because it is a counsel of despair.
Can I come back very briefly on that? What I was suggesting was not that you were being dangerous in freeing people, but that in the administrative process of trying to free people, you're actually playing to the classificatory game that has become established in our state organs. And criminals need freedom too. Just by classifying somebody as a criminal or a likely criminal, you then, under the supervisory mechanism, change their life chances. They might as well be hanged for a sheep or as a goat. And they lose the freedom to be better people.
I think we may part company. I think you do lose some of your civil liberties when you've committed a crime. I think that's actually the line I would draw in terms of practical administration. I mean, and indeed, it's a very practical point. If you've committed a serious crime and you get your DNA on the DNA database, that's your problem. Because it's an entirely reasonable thing for the state to say most crimes are committed by people who have committed other crimes, and therefore let's make it easier to catch them, not least as a deterrent. So I think we do have a division there. Yeah.
We have a second question there. The gentleman there, and then the back.
Damian, as you can probably tell from my often educated Patterson's accents, I actually agree with most of the conclusions you've made. And I also very interested in the congelation of concepts about what I call association, socialisation. I agree with all of that. But don't you think, over the last 30 years, governments you've been part of, and the current government, the destruction of certain institutions such as the trade unions and the private sector, actually advertise very much?
I don't actually, and partly because I grew up in the 1970s when the trade unions were among the most unpleasant, bullying. They weren't just anti-freedom; they held people back as well. I mean, clearly trade unions were originally born from an idealism and a practical idealism that said, working people are oppressed. They need to get together to express collective power so that they can have basic freedoms, and that's the principle of that is fine. What they had become, certainly by the 1970s, were agents of oppression for people, and so I think getting rid of trade union power was one of the best things that happened in the 1980s. I think there is a case to be made that a society that makes individual rights absolutely all-encompassing and removes sort of all sense of mutual community relations will go wrong. And so, if you like, the intellectual wellsprings that are purely Hayek and people like that say once you start interfering in the ability of the individual to be completely autonomous, then you've instantly gone into serfdom, to use Hayek's language. I don't agree with that. I think that you can only get to that state where you have complete individual responsibilities if absolutely every individual is going to behave in a way that promotes the interests of the wider community. And in the end, all human experience tells us man is fallen, and therefore you need some kind of referee to hold the ring, and that's the sort of basic role of the state. So, as I say, I keep saying often, I don't think the state has no role. I think the state's too big and intrusive, but I think there is a role for the state. I think a lot of the role for the state is in ensuring that individual desires don't get out of control. But what I feel where we are at the moment in Britain is that the over-intrusive state actually suppresses the ability of people to express their natural desires to relate to each other and improve their own communities and trust each other, and so that what we're doing now is actively counterproductive in terms of promoting a better society.
We have a question at the back and then the gentleman in the middle. Could you just ID yourself, even though we're all know to ID?
Yeah, sure. Excuse me. My name is Dylan Sharp. I'm the campaign director of Big Brother Watch. I was delighted to hear you use our CCTV stats.
Excellent. We're Philip. Is it 1 in 15 or 1 in 40?
No, it's the council, 60,000. Yeah, obviously, big minority work. But one of the things we found actually is that poor people, the working class, so forth, actually have a very good understanding of their civil liberties. It's the middle class who therefore view the working class poor people as a threat to their civil liberties, say we need more CCTV, we need ID cards, we need border controls to keep these people under control. We find it's far harder to kind of sell the civil liberties argument to them, to sell the fact that the surveillance state and the fact they're being monitored day in, day out. And I was just wondering, how do we convince people? I mean, not that we should need to, but how do we tell them that currently the state is intruding far further into their lives than they ought to be comfortable with? This kind of truism of that if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear seems to be very prevalent among the middle classes as opposed to poor people.
That's a really, really interesting question, and it's a very central part of political debate. I'm seeking not to be any more partisan, given it's 6 weeks ago for a general election, than I need be this evening. But I note that on the Labour Party website, one of the issues they've chosen to highlight, take a hard look at the Conservatives, is the DNA database, and they are clearly, the government clearly has got focus groups that said, control is what people want, and how do you combat? You argue, and you keep arguing the case for civil liberties, and